Good morning, good afternoon, however it is, good evening even, or good night even, if you're just tuning in. It's me, back. Yeah, it's been a few minutes, a few hot minutes since I've last been on, but I'm definitely doing all the positive things, staying positive in life, in a busy environment, keeping busy, keeping training, keeping my brain functioning, the most important thing, and doing the breathing exercises in general, and studying, doing a lot of research, watching what's out there, what's also available in information for us all to pick up on, and maybe I can import some of it onto you. I've been looking at sound, I've been looking at music, I've been looking at the origins of music. I've also been looking at sport, health, fitness, and even self-defense. Self-defense is a thing that I've really had to think about, because in the world that we live in, it's very difficult to ascertain where we are as individuals, as in to another individual. And this is a very philosophical view of self-defense. Why I put it that way, that what you might deem as self-defense may not be deemed by the wider society as self-defense. So it's always good to understand how you as the individual are deemed within that situation, because that is when you are held accountable. You as a very peaceful person getting into altercations will cause a ripple effect in your life. It becomes difficult to detach yourself from that situation for quite a long time, and that is quite a good thing, to sort of be self-reflective, especially in situations. And that's why, rather than teach you self-defense in the sort of practical sense where you're going to see me showing you moves that are quite sort of important to learn, but they have a, there's a reason for doing certain moves, self-defense, and there are people out there who haven't got the right mindset to class themselves as what I would class as doing self-defense, or be recognized as a martial artist. Some of them are thugs, some of them see themselves as bad boys. Yeah, it's unfortunate we have this in society. We have people who see violence as a means to sort out their issues, and self-defense is not violence, but it's part of that realm of violence where a situation or altercation occurs. That altercation leads to you having to make a decision, usually a split-second decision. And I say it's a split-second decision because you have not premeditated the situation to occur in any shape or form. That is really morally where I would stand, or most people, grandmasters, senseis, protagonists, pugilists, would stand upon the realm of self-defense. Fighting is totally different, because you're in a fight once you engage into self-defense, but there's a sticky line between your own responsibility and the other person, who is then you're going to have to maintain that stance, that in the law, the courts of law, you would have to maintain that you at no time in that situation that occurred did you cause that situation or want that situation to occur for you to deem whether your actions were necessary. And that's looking at the you weren't hurt. And that's why I can't do it with a smiley face. You can't smile. If you hurt somebody, you have caused harm to another person. And that is something that morally is wrong. So as a person who looks deep into things, even if you are in the right, the minute you strike that person, you have morally done something wrong. Why I say that? Because there is always an option of not to strike first. And that is what the law always deems that is lawful. And you don't have to ask me, or you don't have to take my word for it. That is how the law stands. If you strike somebody first, you are breaking the law. And this is the grey area of where people want to justify self-defense and blah de blah, and that's why I mentioned pugilists, I mentioned grandmasters, because they have a deeper understanding and a deep responsibility to who they teach, how they teach, and how they get that message across. As anybody who has ever been in any competitive sport, which is a contact sport, will understand there's always a chance you're going to get hurt, and you always mitigate against that. You wear shin guards, you wear a gum shield in your mouth as a boxer. You have a groin guard in cricket. American footballers, they have headgear, they have shoulder pads, they have all sorts of padding on them. Boxers, they have boxing gloves. These are for their protection. Footballers, they have protection, their football boots, and there is a referee there in most of these sports. And if not most of them, all of them have some form of person looking over to make sure the sport is adhered, all the rules are adhered to within that sport. And self-defense is indeed a sport as well. So most of the classes that people take are for the learning of the arts, the martial arts, in a sporty way, in a healthy way. In no shape or form can they teach aggression into somebody. Boxers cannot be taught to put aggression, to have aggression. They have to have aggression already in them. And that's usually a sort of sad life to have led for them to have reached that point where they enjoy inflicting harm upon another human being. And that's something that you can't easily switch off. And I'm going to use an analogy of when I've spoken to two, or I've seen two boxers after a fight, and we're talking the post-match interviews. Some fighters, it's 3 or 4 days before they have an interview, and I'm smiling, I'm laughing, I'm saying that because it's like, well, why are you saying 3 or 4 days isn't, good enough? Well, if you think about most sports, they have an interview straight after the sport, and most boxers may not want to admit it, but I know that a lot of them do suffer a great deal of pain, discomfort, not immediately after the fight, but within a few hours after the fight, of when the adrenaline starts to come down. And this is what sort of happens in street fighting. A lot of it is adrenaline driven, thrill-seeking sort of people who like to have a barney, they like to have a brawl. That's why it's called brawling. It's not exactly a nice thing to look at. It's very ugly. As is war, as is any form of violence, as is fighting, it's very ugly. But when you see it in a controlled way, we see it, and we can, people goad you on, yeah, go on, yeah. But we all know that the boxers get hurt within that fight. And I'm not going to press on and sort of go against boxers or any sport. Football's the same. They have to sometimes go into baths and things like that after injuries. Cricketers, rugby players, they have a lot of injuries that are sustained during the contact sport that they're involved in. So self-defense, as I said, is a contact sport. So you have all sorts of martial arts, and some of the best ones are going to teach you all the aspects, all the sides of it: spiritual side, the compassionate side as well, and the lawful side, the law, which does lean towards the compassion of the individual. So if you're in a situation where you have to use self-defense, the law will back you up if you have followed all the steps that occur within that. When you do martial arts, there is a little bit of a higher sort of standard you're held to, so you might have to then warn that person a couple of times that that you don't want to involve in any situation. And the best way to avoid being hit or being in a situation is not to be there in the first place. So the first option that a person should always consider is walking away. Being apologetic, walking with your tail between your legs, yapping, walking off, yapping, whatever. There's no shame in that. There's no shame whatsoever, because you are defending yourself. Running your mouth off is not really defending yourself. It's some people see it as a form of defense. It's not really self-defense. You're not really using your sense there, because the situation could easily be sort of sorted out just by you shutting up, by you averting your gaze, moving away, vacating the premises, moving away from where the situation is occurring. That is also part of self-defense. Don't get things twisted by you got big muscles, you've done all the training, you've got now developed an ego. The muscles, as I said during one of my episodes, that muscles will give you an advantage, that you look more menacing. Remember that you look more menacing when you're big and you're bulky. Let's gonna put it straight. Big bulky just looks menacing. It does not in any shape or form constitute you being a harder person than the next individual. And reason why I say that, because I've seen people who train, they train hard, they're big, they're massive, and I don't care what they might look at me and say, oh, but who are you? You're a punk. And I get it. I totally get it. But let me tell you this. One day, you take off your shoes and you're rushing about and you stub your little fucking toe and you tell me how you feel. You feel like a bitch. Every big man, every tall man, every small man, every woman, every child, every human being who stub their little toe will tell you that hurts like nothing in this world. And medical people will tell you you actually break that toe when you smash it against bits of furniture. And we all are susceptible to this happen. It's happened to me countless times and it hurts like hell. So I know that every person, every individual, every human being, every animal has a weakness. We all have a weakness. So self-defense teaches you that you must also be understanding of your own weaknesses, your own humility, your own sense of being able to rationale where you are wrong, because you might be that person who's caused that trouble and you could easily sort of disperse that energy away from the trouble, but you've chosen then because of your size. That is bullying. That is not self-defense in no shape or form, or goading somebody into a fight, that and then beating them and then claiming self-defense. I, as a person who have trained in self-defense, would not class that as self-defense. And if you try to use that in court and it's proved against you, then that is how the court has seen it, because they are skilled enough to see through that. The police are skilled enough to see through what's going on in there, and they will look at every part of that CPS. So we all have to sort of look at that and say that is how the law stands. The law has the ability to see through and is competent enough to know when two parties are not sort of working together and there's some conflict there, and they will work that out. So morally, as I said, violence is wrong. So we reach a stage in our sort of civilization where we have different sets of people with different sets of beliefs. We don't always have to get along. We still have to try as men and as young men and as older men to try to build a better society, build a better place for the next generation, and hopefully deal with conflicts better. We have different levels of sort of authority out there. We have different levels of skills out there. We have people who don't know what the next person is capable of or what is in their mind. Don't try to get into somebody's mind to sort of outsmart them, you know what I mean, so you can have a laugh on their expense. This can cause problems with some people because they're not wired right. That's the way it is. You have some people who don't want to see reason. So self-defense has taught me this. It's taught me a lot of things about life, a lot of ways of getting out of problems, not causing problems. Self-defense, fighting is not the way forward for a man, a young man who is not in control of his emotions. You are liable to hurt somebody, end up in prison, end up even getting killed yourself. That can easily happen, being not in control of your emotions. You're not seeing what the situation is, you're not focused. It's called tunnel vision, seeing red mist, the fog of war, which we can talk about later on, how that can work to your advantage, or is this because it's something that's always there. You can never out train these things. You can be a person who can switch off and see things around you that are so chaotic and so harrowing that you then have post-traumatic disorder, and you cannot then sort of work in sort of normal society. That would be a sort of a really bad thing to happen as well. So don't put yourself through emotional stress and not have an outlet. I understand that is another outlet that young men use is violence. Young women use it also. All people use it. It was a way that people used to discipline people. They use violence, and we know ultimately that is a means to an end. And in the animal kingdom, we know that is that's basically how they operate. But we're not in the animal kingdom. We're sophisticated. We are more able to rationale. So in your moments of solace, hopefully you can look back on situations where maybe you was wrong and bring them into the next situation and think, no, I'm not going to make that same mistake of not being able to correct it before it gets to that point of where, you know, it gets out of hand. Yeah, maybe words were said. Maybe you can get to that stage where you, before you get to the you know, the hurtful sort of insults and that, because that can lead to, to a lot of bad feeling. And we do have people who don't deal with situations the way they should. So if we understand that, we understand self-defense as not just a great way of keeping yourself fit, but it also keeps yourself safe and away from danger, because you understand that there are lots of things to understand about yourself. And the more you understand about yourself, you can maneuver around out of danger, because that is one of the first things I was taught in martial arts, is to be able to understand what are the signals, what are the signs that you need to look out for, what do you need to avoid, and then you do that to the best of your ability. That all you get, you find that you've avoided a lot more situations than you've had to then deal with. And that, to me, is self-defense, because that is ultimately what you're trying to do. You're trying to defend your rights, and if you're in the right, you have a right under the law to defend that. Anything above that, that is you taking the law into your own hands. And then if you get a beating for it, the law will then tell you, well, mate, you was wrong. Maybe your family will. Maybe you've got friends who can tell you, if you're an angry person, try and keep calm. Sometimes there's that red mist, and you just don't want to see reasoning. You know what I mean? You're just one of them people, and you just, like a bull, two people clash. Nobody can step in. So if you're one of them, people try and avoid you. So try to be a person that's, you see the situation, you read it a little bit better, and even agree with the person. Change your body language, change your posture, stop shaping around. Don't be a shaper. Don't be a person who's easily goaded into situations. And I love trying to get these sort of ideologies out there. I love it, because I think these are things that I see in everyday life. I see, we all get caught up in situations, and we all want to be right. We all want to save face. We all, are susceptible to this. Audiences can cause, people to react in all sorts of ways and different situations. And if you can understand that other person's situation, maybe you can avoid upsetting that person and then causing them to act in a way that they might regret. And if you're a well-trained person, you'll understand that you don't always have to hit somebody, because you'll get into a lot of trouble because you're going to hurt that person. And that's basically where I'm at with that. If you're trained to hurt people, you should, at every moment of the time, watch your step, because you will have very few opportunities to justify that. And that's just the way it is. If you're a person who's, you will be seen as a bully, you will be seen as a menace to society, and society has a way of clearing up menaces to itself. Peace.